Hey everybody! Happy Thursday! Welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with your host, me, and plus disembodied voice Justin, who is here with us today and not being horribly distracted for once. But, it doesn't mean we're here from him, but,
Hello.
Yay, Justin lives! He's not the zombie George. He is truly alive and here. Hello everybody, yep, we're here. Yeah, sorry for the delay this morning. This was a very slow morning and Kiri incidental. Kiri took her time this morning and still isn't, fully emptied, so I'm not certain how we'll go. Kiri, what are you doing? What are you eating? Kiri's just, this is a Kiri day. Kiri's like, I'm gonna get into trouble all day. Yeah, look at that face. Totally, dog. But anyway, I hope everybody is having a good morning. Hey, it's Chars. Hello. Yes, thank you for saying hello, everybody. It does. Twitch actually keeps track of how many people are chatting at any given time, and there's actually goals and emotes that are linked to it. So when you just pop in, even if you just pop in to say hello, it counts. Yes. Mathophile, I was talking with David last night about NMM after our discussion yesterday about using math and how when you've got math brain, it's hard to grok NMM sometimes, because the problem is that David's the problem is that you essentially NMM will never look perfect from every angle, and so mathematically, you're kind of doomed because you can't take into account everything from every angle, and plus half the time you don't even know what's in the surrounds of your miniature. You kind of have a rough idea, but you can't translate it the way that you could actually look at a real life thing. If it was in a diorama, you'd have a better idea. But so that's why we generalize as far as NMM goes, and we do our best. And he agreed that a computer rendering program would probably give you the best results, at least in a vacuum. So I just wanted to tell you that before I forgot, because we were discussing. This is what Ann and David discuss over steak dinner: is non-metallic metals. Our house is so weird. Good morning, Clavicus. Thanks for the sub. Resub 5 months. Sweet. Awesome. Alrighty, let me get myself organized here. I know that's like a tall order this morning. I don't know. Some nights where you just don't get you get sleep, but you are kind of, you wake up and you're feeling like you're still an hour ago as far as your brain is concerned. That's where I am today. We have Fire Giant happily, though, and we have... Hey, look, guys, I used my trick last night because I didn't want to remix all those NMM colors. So I saran wrapped my palette, and I did put, a drop of water in each of these wells. And what that does is just add extra moisture, especially if you've only got a few wells in here. But you can see that my paint is still fluid here, and it'll be a little bit thicker, but that's fine. Usually I only have to add 1 drop of water to get it to a point where I can work from. So I decided I did not want to. Yeah, apparently it is, Muses. I'm betting that most people, unless they are in a mini painting couple, which is more and more common these days, but unless they're in a mini painting couple, talking NMM during dinner is very odd. So I'm unsaran wrapping my palette. Got all our nice things. I did add rather too much water to my leather and kind of broke it, but don't be alarmed if you see something like this after you've let your paint sit overnight. That's a long time. Any paint is going to separate a bit, and it should just be fine when you mix it back in. Just, if you see this, mix the paint before you add more water to it. Before you decide you need more water, just mix it quick. I pulled out a bunch of crappy brushes yesterday to use as a mixing brush, and yet the one thing I am missing is a good mixing brush size brush. So let me grab a mixing brush size brush. That looks like a good mixing brush size brush. Something fat, but not too fat. Yeah, that looks pretty good. That's a good fat brush. So it's a cheapo synthetic, so that'll be great. You don't want something too big for your mixing brush because you don't want it to, hold all the paint, right? Because if you load it up when you're mixing, you're wasting paint if you have a huge mixing brush. So this is actually a pretty good size brush. It's actually about the same size as my Raphael, except it's just thicker. So it's actually going to mix a lot more efficiently. The reason I don't use the butt end of brushes, like some companies, James Workshop used to teach you that in the past. One, I always forget and get paint on myself. From it sticking to here and me not cleaning it well enough. And 2, using a single sturdy stick is actually not the most efficient way to mix your paint. It takes longer, and I don't like things that take longer when I could just use something else. So first we mix it, And actually, this is thin enough that I do not need to add water. So I'm just going to hold off there, rinse my brush, go on to my other colors. And the paints are still perfectly fine. Some of them, if they're a little bit thicker, might have a little bit of a strip around the edge where it's like gotten more tacky. But in general, what I'm finding here is that these are still really good. Any brush that I see that's separated out, I'm just going to mix without adding water to right out the gate. And most of them are going to be about the same way I started, actually. After evaporation overnight, even though these had gone to, many of these had gone to 2-to-1, especially because I add an extra drop of water before I saran wrap them. But they're pretty much, they've evaporated back down to around a 3-to-1 consistency. Just eyeballing it here. That's my guess. After you've done a lot of ratio mixing, you can just look at the paint and know roughly what ratio you're at. Just look at how it is falling off the side of the palette, how it just looks in the palette, how it looks on your brush. You can get a general feel for these things. This one's separated out just a little, but it probably needs a drop of water just because it's a light color. But yeah, so that's how you kind of work with when you are using this technique of preserving your well palette paints. That's how you kind of work with it. And as a result, I don't have to mix up any new paint today unless I do the blue steel. Or I'm probably going to need some highlights on leather. If orange is spherical, then gray implies 4. Yes, pretty much. Well, I mean, the stuff that I teach is really simplifying NMM, right? Like, I'd only been at Reaper probably a year when they asked me to write Learn to Paint Kit 2, the old Learn to Paint Kit 2, which was NMM. Or was it 3? It was 3, NMM. So actually 2 years then, after I started at Reaper. That would have been around 2005. And I had 2 pages to do it in Mathifile. 2 pages to somehow simplify NMM and make it accessible to people. So I ended up looking at my NMM and very much simplifying it, like down to the base components. And I still teach those base components because when you come down to a surface, although you can vary it up to make it look better and more real, you're still really only dealing with your brightest highlight, your dark shadow, and your reflection. Those 3 things are what gives you shiny and reflective. So that's an extremely simple way to think about it, but you can apply that to various surfaces relatively easily if you have a bit of imagination. I also use the gut measure more. Like David and you probably would get along as far as like your techniques, because David is also a math brain, and he doesn't rely on his gut like I do. I do a lot based on my gut because I just spend a lot of time looking at metal objects and kind of seeing how they react under light, so that when I look at my own objects that I'm trying to paint to look like metal, I have a gut instinct for like, that doesn't quite look right. Oh, now it's starting to work, That way I can always troubleshoot. And on a difficult, the old paint kit. Well, it's the same thing as I've been teaching all along, though, Val. You don't need that paint kit because actually it's probably, I think it's very outdated now. Like, all the stuff that I teach on these streams with NMM, I'm teaching exactly the same principles. So, and I'm teaching them with a little bit more panache. So, like, it's a little bit more flair. There's a little bit more variation. Because those are just your basics. It's just figure out where your brightest light is going to be. And your brightest light is always going to be on the surface. That's going to, essentially, if you imagine this as a mirror, a flat mirror, where are you going to tilt that mirror so that it suddenly reflects toward your eyes? Like, when is that mirror going to blind you? And that angle is where your brightest highlights are going to be. And then everything else is reflected light and shadow. And so imagining where that mirror is, where that angle is the key to unlocking NMM for you. So you've got to think about, on this surface, and even on a micro surface, you got to do the same thing. So like on these little, let's get down closer. So on this little face here, although I've very much simplified this, but on this little rounded surface, where is it going to reflect toward the viewer? Where is it going to reflect toward the viewer up here? That sort of thing. Oh, you have the other 2. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't write the first one. I don't remember who did. I think I rewrote it at one point to just edit it, make it a little bit more um, comprehensive. I don't remember though. I might not have. But Learn to Paint Kit 1 was in existence when I started at Reaper. I think it had just come out. And that's why they asked me within that first year to write the second one. Yeah, you've got to, Mathophile. Like, okay, so here's where David and I do agree, is that most miniatures have a logical viewing angle. In this case, the logical viewing angles on this guy are front and back. Because usually you're not going to be looking at that angle, right? And usually you're not going to be looking at that angle. Most people, when they pick up a very linearly aligned model like this, are looking from one angle. So this has a very simple address. And usually what you're thinking of is your viewer is slightly above the model and pretty much straight onto the model, whatever the prime viewing angle is. And you've got some wiggle room, right? You don't have to be perfect in here. You can wiggle it a little bit. If your person is looking at it from this angle or this angle, they're still going to see, right? They're still going to see it correctly. It's still going to look shiny. So I look at viewing angles when I am NMMing a figure, and sometimes you've got a complex or interesting enough model that you need to have like 4 different viewing angles, where it is like actually that both sides are also logical viewing angles, as well as the front and sometimes the back. My Mounted Valkyrie is like that. So for her, the problem is that the horse has obvious viewing angles, and she has one good viewing angle that I've now expanded to 2, but I have to think about all of these viewing angles if I'm going to do NMM. I probably don't need to worry about the back side, because it's going to be dark and a lot of people aren't really going to be interested in it. But figure out what your logical viewing angle is for the model, and that's where you address. Yes, that's correct. In fact, Sergio is like that. If you look, it's David's favorite painter. Sergio actually does this. He actually creates 2 light sources, one on each side of the figure, because he knows people are going to look at the figure from the front and the back. So he does a diffused frontal light source. Probably he does it a little bit more out front. Like his light source is less coming down from above and more hitting the model very strongly at this angle. And then he's got another one that comes in and hits it at this angle. And this is like, it's just his style. It's what he's evolved so that he can paint the front and the back and have them look, have them look at the same level. It approximizes kind of an overhead generalized light source, but not really. It's very stylistic. But this is where lighting influences your style. Like Sergio's style would not look as like poppy and cartoony and dramatic as it does without his attention, without his doing that light sourcing thing. It's a key component of his style and why his miniatures look the way they do. Yeah, and it's why NMM works really well for photographs. Steve Clearman has it in 1. It's because you have that prime viewing angle, and if you shoot the model, if you photograph the model from that prime viewing angle, it's going to look perfect. And you can control all those nice highlights and shadows so that it's all, it's setting out all your details, and it looks great. And so that's why people really like to use NMM in photographs. It always looks great. Whereas metallics, you're fighting, right? Because you have the light source, even if you've shaded your metallics, you've got, like Snake Lady, where we did shaded metallics. Like, I had to bury the metallic on this sleeve to make it not reflect. It's the only way to control where my highlights fall. This way, no matter where the light is coming from, it's going to pick up somewhere up here, which is where I want the light to be coming from. And painting regular opaque paint in shadows over the rest of it, it forces the highlights to be where I want them to be. And really, I think that's the only way to do shaded metallics if you're trying to really control light source. So essentially, it's not even real. Like it's half of it is metallic, and then the other half isn't. So those are the sort of things that I think about. But it will make Snake Lady photo a little better than she would otherwise. It's control. Yeah, I mean, that's why I mentioned, is that what you should probably do, Mathophile, is concentrate on your, like, overhead lighting. Like, concentrate on visualizing your light source at various directions. And busts are really good for this, because you can look at, somebody posted it on my Discord, actually. They posted kind of it's got a set of different pictures of a face, a human, she's being photoed from with light at various angles in a studio setting, and it's meant to help portraiture photographers. But it's also really good if you're looking for an unusual light source for your bust. The one thing they don't have is they don't have a secondary light source a lot of the time, so one side of her face might be in deep shadow and she's not getting a lot of reflected light back there. But it is good to envision like rounded or organic surfaces, so you could look up stuff like that. So studio lighting for portrait artists and stuff like that is a useful reference. And you can find that picture on my Patreon. I don't remember what channel it was in. It might be in general. But yeah. See, and I argued with David on this, though, Jim. Is I feel that in most cases, if you are paying attention, and if you are not, like... In most cases, I feel you can make NMM read well from different directions. Like, Giant here, this guy, he reads... I haven't even done the reflections on this side, but he reads pretty well from this angle. He reads really well from that angle. He reads well from this angle. You know, this does not read poorly, even from this angle. So the key here, I think, is consistency and paying, when you know the model is turning, pay attention to how it looks from different angles and make sure it's not blatantly clashing. I think if you paint the model consistently, it's going to be like you're going around the model in real life. So you expect there to be a brighter highlight here maybe. Now there is some reflection light that you're going to get that you can't really account for. But even then, if you look at the model from these off angles and you try to correct just a little, even though it's not realistic, I find that NMM can look very good from multiple angles. It's maybe when you are striving to do what David and I agreed on is when you're doing a burnished surface like this, it's very easy to get NMM to look good from all angles. When you're doing sky earth, that's when it looks wrong. And sky earth is like a mirror. It's like chrome, right? It's got a very defined horizon line. And so that's why it doesn't work from different angles. Because here, you can kind of soft fudge it and it'll look good everywhere. But with chrome, you must be very precise about the angle you're looking at it from, which means that it's going to look off from other angles. So the sky earth thing needs to be done. Like you have to be very cognizant of your viewing angles and you have to address it on all of them so that it looks right. And that's the challenge, right? So that's why SENMM, a lot of people will do it on a shield because that's a relatively flat surface and it's not going to make it look bad anywhere else. But if you're doing chrome all around a model, then you can get into big trouble just because there's always going to be an angle it doesn't look right at. So I think that when people say that NMM, doesn't look bad in person, they're wrong, flat out. I think that they aren't taking into account the fact that when you're not working with a mirrored surface, it's actually quite feasible to make NMM look good from multiple angles. That's just my opinion. My opinion, like working with NMM for a very long time. And I was self-taught at NMM, although Sergio's class definitely has upped my game on NMM. But yeah, so that's my 2 cents. I use it a lot. I don't enjoy painting it a lot, is because it's I just need to block in that shadow. That was annoying me. I find NMM very fiddly to paint, but I've gotten so used to it that I just do it all the time. Hey guys, hey Zambies. We're having an in-depth discussion about NMM, which is kind of carried over from yesterday. Non-metallic metal, for those of you who are new and do not know what NMM is, it is what we are doing here. So we are using yellows, browns, and whites to create the illusion of a shiny surface, just like appears not metallic. I find on miniatures, especially on finely detailed miniatures, and small ones with really small, like my Targaryen I was working on for Jim. Hold on. So, for models like this, which are very fine detailed and tiny, the only way to do this is with NMM. It's really, this is a model I was working on in my stream for commission. The only way to get this little tiny 3-headed dragon to look like a tiny 3-headed dragon is NMM. Like, if you've got to do it in gold, if you try to do this in metallics, it's just, you're never going to be able to pick out all these details. Like, it's never going to be that crisp. And when it's this small, thanks Tom Meyer, when it's this tiny, you need it to all stand out very crisply. Same with her little belt here. Do you see how finely detailed that is? Hold on. So tiny little, it's a base coat. You can even see the faults of my base coat. But it's got these tiny little concentric squares, kind of. It's got an outer ring and an inner dot. So it's like, yeah, it's hard to even see it. But I have to paint that, so there we go. So when it comes down to things like that and making each of those, and this detailing on the sleeve, which has a little, you can see it's got a double band of gold and then it's got kind of a little wavy design. Getting all this to read as gold and for all those details to stand out. And then you've got this tiny little brooch. You can see it's got a little ring around a central dot. And to get out those details, if you try metallics, you ain't going to do it. The flake is just too large for these details, in my opinion. Yeah, thanks, Tom Meyer. So yeah, she's she's Rhaenys Targaryen, so she's actually the sister queen of Aegon the Conqueror, the first Targaryen who made trouble in Westeros. And I'm painting her and her sister and Aegon for Jim Ludwig at Dark Sword. So we were working on the blonde hair this week on my own personal stream. She's really so pale, it's very hard to get it to work. But yeah, so that's what we've been working on. But that's an example of why on 28mm, I think the answer is almost always NMM. Because otherwise getting those tiny details to really show up, it's so difficult. It's just so difficult with metallics. All right, well, let's back out because Fire Drain is way too close. Way too close. There we go. Now let's get back in actual focus here. Here, Fire Giant. Get in focus. Focus. She's actually 35mm tall, Moonglooms, but she's very fine. Tom Meyer sculpts real scale, like really realistically. So although she's a 35mm, her features and her face is actually smaller, like than a 28mm Reaper. It's a lot less cartoony. It's a lot more of a realistic style. Her hands are tiny. Her eyes are infinitesimally tiny. They're very challenging to paint, but they are beautiful figures. And Tom does most of the work in the Song of Ice and Fire, the George R.R. Martin Masterworks line. And I've painted a few from that line for Jim. So, but they're very naturalistic because, George's stuff is not high fantasy in general. It's a lot more gritty. So the realistic sculpting style is more representational. We were doing our NMMs over here, weren't we? Yes, we were. And I was kind of messing them up a little bit. This is what I was talking about, kind of burnishing. If you burnish your metal or you make some texture or you suggest some texture, you've got a bit more leeway. But you still need to stick to that kind of where's my highlight, where's my reflection kind of thing. Yeah, they're beautiful, but they're hard to paint. Like, Jim, the thing is just that, sometimes I feel like they're so difficult for new painters. And when you try to, when a new painter comes up to me at, or used to come up to me at Paint Club or whatever going, how do I do these eyes? And I kind of look at them and go, close your eyes and pray. Get your brush loaded and get ready. But it's just because it is a very difficult sculpt to paint because it's so fine. But when they're done nicely, they're just like little jewels. Like they're just can get them to be just beautiful little sculpts. So I'm putting in some red on our gold here. You put in a touch of the ruddy leather up here toward the top. I do need to, this isn't strictly correct, so I need to correct this. Once again, I was going on autopilot, right? Breaking it down, highlight, shadow, reflection. But technically, my reflection should be more broad here. So I did it wrong. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint over this whole one and fix it. Because the light is falling here. So we should actually have, because this is a cylinder, we should have a middle highlight here. So we should actually have a broad highlight going right down the middle, which suddenly, might look a little bit better. And I also need to broaden this highlight so that's more realistic. And put a darker shadow in. So troubleshooting. Sometimes I go in auto mode if I've got a weird shaped surface. And then I have to correct myself and say, no, this is not how it would highlight. Yeah, the elves from Thunderbolt are also very small and delicate. Yeah, scratches on steel is same as gold are the same as on steel. It's just gonna be a scratch. It's gonna pick up the light just like I did over here. That's what I did on the side of the helmet here, Mathophile. All these little scratches. Because I figured a whole bunch of people would probably be trying to get him. And he's got a little nick in his helmet there, so I figured there would be more damage here. So it's light. Usually, if it's micro scratches, you can get away with just that little dash of light. If you have room and it's a larger scratch, you definitely want a dark shadow above that line, because that's the actual dent or cut, and it's the lower edge of that that's catching the light for the scratch. Depends on how big it is. If it's a dent, then you've got a much more like this guy up here on his helmet. Then you've got much more of a gash. And if you have a big dent, then you might even need to bring some dark into the area above it, like if the whole helmet has kind of a big dent in it. You could create that illusion as well. And he has a lot of like dings and notches on his armor that show that he's been through a lot with this armor. Yeah, I mean, I usually, honestly, when people are learning to get better, I recommend Jeff Grace's sculpts. I think that Jeff has a lot of, his eyes are a little bit bigger, his areas tend to be very smooth, his sculpts are very crisp, and I feel like that Jeff's models are good to practice on, essentially. And then when you get a little more confident, and it's really what you need for Tom Myers stuff is just brush control. Like, you need to be in that land of brush control, where you are able to hit fine details. And underpainting can help make a lot of those little details stand out. There are simpler models from the Gurm line. I mean, Cersei Lannister, Rhonda Bender uses it for like transparent cloth. It's a really good transparent cloth model. And she is a very simple model. She's beautiful and finely featured, but she's kind of like got her eyelids mostly closed, like her face is kind of lifted up. You could just like do them almost like eyes closed. And so the most difficult part of the model, you know, is just getting the face right. But the dress is really pretty, and it's not that challenging. So now I'm going to put that shadow in. Doo-doo-doo. It's sculpted. I could do an illusion with the paint very easily. I mean, what do I have? Yeah, I have Mr. Grumpy. Here, Chars. Here's Mr. Grumpy. Mr. Grumpy wants to say hi. Mr. Grumpy says, this dent on my breastplate that you see here is actually not a dent. It is actually painted on. It is a perfect illusion, as is all the rest of this battle damage. So if you want to paint, and this little pockmark here is also. So, and this dent is also. So you can, and this is metallics, this is shaded metallics, which is why it's being so difficult for me to actually show you this while there's so much light on the subject. But that is an example. This is an example of how you would do a dent, where it's not just a line of shadow, but you actually blend in a bit of shadow from above, right, to show that the armor is indented. So, yes, that is how you do it. It is fun. Especially fun on busts and things like giants, where you have a lot of room. When you've got a big expanse of metal, that's where you really can kind of like dig in and get all excited and do some dents and battle damage. But even little areas like this, like, well, this is a relatively big, broad area, and otherwise it would be very featureless. But bringing in a lot of dings and dents, little tiny micro scratches, makes it more visually interesting. So, it's hard to tell on the metal. But when I look at it, the things you're seeing as bumps are actually opaque paint that I put down Mathophile. So like these little fissures down here are not sculpted on, like these little bumps that you see. They're not. It's actually just the difference between a matte paint and a glossy finish. So some of this texture, I mean, this is actually a very smooth breastplate in person. There's a little bit of a flare out down here at the bottom. This one, though, I can't remember if there's like a micro bump there that made me decide to do this big bump. But like this and that, all of this is just painted texture. That's all it is. It's all an illusion. Except for like, yeah, there may be one. Maybe that divot actually had like a tiny imperfection that I decided to emphasize. But yeah, that breastplate, Mr. Grumpy, I mean, Kirill sculpted him to be a class model, so he on purpose gave you that big metal expanse to work on this sort of technique with. But yeah, it's when you've got an area of metal that doesn't have a lot of features on it, if you've got the right personality for the model, right? because sometimes you have a model with a lot of metal and it just looks like this person's personality would be that their armor would be pristine, like my Templar girl. Her armor is going to be gosh darn like magically untouched. I mean, I'm doing chrome on her, for God's sakes. I'm like looking forward to that and not looking forward to it at the same time. I want to do it because I haven't done it on anything. I think I played around with it a long time ago just to learn how to do it. But I haven't done it on a real like piece where I really wanted it to look good. So this is going to be a fun resurrecting how to do stuff lesson for Anne as well. I like to push myself. I like to do things. Dentist, fun. I have to make an appointment, Twisted Doma. I've been bad since I came out to Cali. With all of the COVID stuff, I really haven't wanted to go. So it's like, and I'm going to broaden this a bit. I don't want quite of a, I don't want a sharp. Okay, so here's where we don't want necessarily a sharp shadow. Like, the sharper I do this, the more it's going to look like Sky, Earth, or Chrome. So I need to actually go in here and soften this shadow. So let's go in and just paint our base over it. And I'm going to actually do a little bit of my highlight yellow first. So when you're going for a softer, like burnished metal that isn't super shiny, you don't need to have your shadow right under your highlight. You can do a quick blend between the two. You still want them to be relatively close to each other, but you can kind of do something like that and then pop your highlight in there, kind of in the middle. Yep, this white needs help. It must have more paint added to it. Hey, Dogfather, how's it going? Doop. There, that's better. I need stronger white. If I'm gonna have my highlights on my NMM, I need stronger white. More white. My white got a little bit of yellow in it, actually, so it's not quite as white as I would like it to be. Oof, yeah. Yeah, I had to get a couple of crowns. I used to grind my teeth at night. So that'll get you crowns, no question of it. By the time they discovered it, it was too late. I already had cracks, so crowns are us. But it's all right. There we go. So I can do the same thing down here with my highlights. So let's soften this out a bit. So like, okay, so not super shiny metal, burnished metal. Put a little bit of the gold coat over the top of it to dim down my shadow. See how that's already making it look softer. And then we're gonna get a little bit more of our pale yellow, which is pretty watery at this point, but we're gonna bring it back, bring it down here a little bit. And then once we've got that, we can pop the highlight more on both those places. Yeah, too late to do anything about it, Dragoneye, yeah. At least I still have my teeth, you know. My grandma and grandpa had dentures, and I'm like, these days it's so much rarer. It must be a lot rarer, I would think. Because there's so much preventative stuff they can do now to preserve your own teeth. Maybe I'm wrong, though. I just remember my grandma popping her dentures out to scare us little kids. Don't look at me in that tone of voice. Hello, Valandar. Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody who just came in. Welcome. We are playing with the NMMs, and I'm correcting my bad NMM of yesterday. So, well, we're trying anyway. It can be difficult when you're dealing with a weird surface, and you're just like, well, how would this actually work? And I don't know, and my yellow is very, very light here. I wonder if I should strengthen it a little bit. There. Give it a little more body. Sometimes after you do put your paints out overnight, if you accidentally add a little bit too much to them. Alright, so let's also fix this one up here, since I I used it as kind of an example of what I used to do that isn't as cool anymore, and so we're going to actually wipe that out. Dun, 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 dun. It's going to get a lot of light on it because it is tilting upward. I'll see if my yellow is light enough here. So when it's aiming at the top, you're going to lose a lot of your shadows. And you're going to get a lot of light that's going to hit everywhere. You still need your shadow for it to look good. And this is where it's like this question about viewing angle, where it has to look right from the angle it's going to be viewed at. And then you can kind of adjust it to other viewing angles, like up a little bit more up top, perhaps. But first, make sure it looks right from your primary viewing angle, whatever that is, wherever your imagined observer is, as Mathophile puts it. You know, canvas painters have it a lot easier on this front. They can control everything. That flat surface is going to be, you know, like whatever they want it to be. So here we have to actually be able to paint a little bit more, thinking about the environment, what it's going to look like. I need a much brighter white on that one up top here. A lot of white all around it. I kind of alternate my highlights a bit because each of these rings can be an irregular surface. So you can see I've done a dot, 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 and then the corners. Not strictly realistic, but it does tend to make it look a bit shinier. And everything that's facing the light is going to be pretty much filled with it. But I still need my details to stand out. So that's actually looking pretty good right now, up at the top level. So I kind of have to test it. Kind of have to look, rotate it a bit, make sure it looks right. Then we can't forget our little rivets, our little studs, which really are just, you know, a dot of yellow. It's like the base coat, a dot of yellow, and a dot of white, smaller dot of white. And that's honestly enough. You do not have to go crazy trying to make these little studs show up right. All right, so I'm going to do this top one, and then we'll go on and we'll do some red and stuff and other leather. Top one is going to be the lightest. It's going to be very, very strong highlight. Minimally shadowed. And again, I'm going to do my kind of like pinpoints highlighting effect. I'm even going to get more light inside. Because an upper surface is going to be a lot brighter. So even though we've still got, you know, it's not the surface that's bouncing light toward your eyes, but it is receiving a lot of light. So we do have to think about that. In my opinion, anyway. A little bit there, a little bit there. A little bit there, a little bit there. I may have lost some of my shadow here. Can give it back with my brush. Man, you guys, right now, chat, you are just dentistry nightmares. Like, hashtag dentistry nightmares. I'm carefully not reading unless I have one of those horrible dreams where all your teeth fall out. You know, everybody has those dreams. I'm gonna strengthen my ruddy leather just a little bit because we're about to work with it. If we can get through the red. We're gonna do some underpainting for the red. Oh, I should do the gold on that real quick. I've been ignoring these little plates. All right, so let's see here. What side, what edge is going to hit the light? This is going to be pretty bright. That's going to be pretty bright. So as the light tilts away here, I think we're going to get a highlight. This is going to get a highlight. This is going to be a pretty linear one. Got a dot there, got a dot there. Probably going to do what I did on these diamonds and kind of do kind of a spreading highlight. Except that that little divot kind of gets in the way. Yep, hashtag dentistry horror stories, right? Dentistry nightmares. For people who already don't like the dentist, don't read chat right now. It's bad. It'll give you much trauma, pre-trauma. There. That's great timing, Manthophile. That'd be a lesson to you, right? Exercise can be hazardous for your health. Every exercise guru in the States just cringed when they heard me say that. Some shadow in here. Too much red here still. I avoided the dentist for a very long time because I didn't have dental insurance for a very long time in my life, a very long period. And I and they were very surprised when I went back that my teeth weren't in as good shape as they were. So I managed to dodge a lot of bullets. My mouth was not full of cavities. So I'm going to kind of highlight a little bit more toward the inner edge here, which is a stylistic choice. I just want some reflection, some color, some light. These little bits. Pop this outer point. Also in line with that. That'll be really strong there. This will be strong here because we've got a highlight here. A little bit at the top here, I think. With tiny little gold ornaments. Often you're just trying to generalize and get it to look kind of right. I don't waste a lot of time thinking about realism on tiny little gold surfaces. In general, I prefer it's like, does it look right? I still need, you know, a shadow, a highlight. I try to make those consistent with anything around that surface. Like making sure that since there's a highlight here, there's a highlight here, and there's going to be a highlight here. Alrighty. And then actually it looks like I've got some tiny little rivets, tiny little gold pins in the middle of this area. Fun! Alright. And actually, to make these stand out, I should put dark around them as well. These little gold detailing things. Where the highlights are all different or wrong. Oh no, I would never do it, Wolfgang. It would just look bad. I mean, if that point what you're talking about is like doing something where light is bending around a chaos object or something, I can't think of a reality in which that would ever look good. Or it's like I was talking about yesterday, where I forget what the example was, but we're like, can you sell the effect? Can you make it look right? Are people going to look at that when you do it and totally not get what you're trying to do? Right? I mean, I guess if everything was reflective, you could do like a swirling effect, maybe, on the metal. Yeah, mismatching clothing, same thing. It's like anything which is outside of the bounds of regular physics or of like kind of what people expect. You have to work extra hard as a painter to justify that. You have to make it obvious that this is a choice you are making and that there's a reason for it. The only way I can see of making doing that kind of effect, like a light bending around a chaos object, would be if most of the model was metal and you did kind of a swirl, like almost like a swirling in the metal. Yeah. And so it's the same thing I talk about, like doing oil streaks and oil stains on stuff. I had a woman like come up and complain to me at Origins one year after I judged that her orc hadn't scored, in the winning 3. And I asked her, why there was brown all over it, just like kind of slathered all over it. And she's like, oh, well, that's oil. And I'm like, well, it just looks like a dirty brown wash, though. How were we supposed to know it was oil? And that's the heart of that, really. If you're going to use an effect, then you've got to think about how that effect would actually occur and how it would actually work. Yeah, NMM with strong OSL. I mean, as a colored OSL, do you mean, Rubicon? Same thing. Yeah. Yeah, it's just at that point you're NMM with two light sources, which is difficult. If they're both strong at different angles, it can be very difficult to make that read. They have to be very evident, I think, in that you have to really do it very strongly. I know somebody who did it for Crystal Brush, I want to say. And I don't remember who it was, but he was doing a science fiction bust, like a cyberpunk bust. And he had 2 different strong sources of neon.
That was Andrew Wang.
Yeah, thank you. It was Andrew. Andrew had 2 very strong light sources that were colored because neon. And it was really hard for him to get those, because he also had a lot of crystals on that model. And it was super hard for him to get it to read right. So yeah, he had metal, he had crystals, and he had 2 strong, I think green and violet? I don't remember. Maybe a blue and a violet.
It was yellow and...
Was it yellow and something? Yellow and magenta? Yellow and magenta, thank you. David has a better memory for this than I do. But when he first showed it to me, it was like in kind of its middle stages, and he was having a devil of a time making everything read correctly with the different light sources. Twisted Helmet depends. I mean, I did this pretty roughly, but this is a very rough helmet. Like, there's lots of little chunks out of the dents and chunks and things. So, do I want to take away the brush marks? I don't know. Maybe I could. If I want to, then I can glaze. Probably would glaze with blue liner and bring it back up. But remember, if I smooth this out, the helmet is going to look less rough hewn. So once again, we're to purpose, right? If you leave brush strokes, you imply texture. So the question is, with a cold iron forged helmet, do I want texture? I probably do. Whereas if I really streamlined these and made them a perfect blend, it would imply that the helmet had perfect smoothness. And there's so many dents and dings on this, I don't feel like that's the right treatment for that metal.
Sorry, not Andrew Wang, Anthony Wang.
Anthony Wang, thank you. Oh, the smoothness DDH, you mean? Kind of my style? It used to be. That's what I do for Darksword, because Jim wants a lot of smoothness in his miniatures. But these days I'm far more into textures and actually thinking about what the surface would be like. So... Hey there, Derek. Ah, yep. Uh-oh, Derek has been watching Mandalorian and getting horrible multi-OSL lighting effects. Sky and Earth. Yep, Sky and Earth and weird lighting, because science fiction. Well then, Derek, let's bring it. That's what I say. Let's see it. Let's see what you've learned. Show us a fancy mini with it, with all that stuff on it. Yeah, right. Yeah, something like a shiny armor with a campfire on the ground. Yeah, you then you're oh see, but then you're under reflection. If you've got a campfire on the ground and you've got a light from above, your under reflection instead is going to be that secondary light source. The tiny brush strokes. Oh yeah, tiny brush strokes. I do love my micro DDH. I do love my micro details. It's kind of where I'm at lately with my painting groove. All right, where were we? Oh yeah, we were playing with this red and trying to make it like look better. Got it. And I was underpainting a lot because red. If you don't want your red to look pink, you underpaint in white and glaze over it. Oh, and I'm going to give you all a plug again, since Derek popping into the chat has reminded me of friends who need your attention and assistance. Not really need, but it's a cool thing. So Rhonda Bender, who did our Learn to Paint kits, has started a Patreon to help kind of, pay for her blog, all the effort and time that she puts into it. And she's thinking if it does well, she'll start expanding that. She has a blog entry up that talks about why she started her Patreon and what her goals are. But it's patreon.com/birdwithabrush. And I love to push Rhonda, and she's very happy with it thus far. She just launched it very recently, so it's very small right now, but growing. So if you have time to go look, if you've enjoyed Rhonda's blog in the past, she does an excellent write-up. She has a journalism background, and she just explains things so well, which is why she does such a nice job on our Learn to Paint kits. So yeah, if you want to help Rhonda out with a couple of bucks, it's very inexpensive right now. It's like she has a $2 level and a $4 level. And the $4 level gets you PDFs of all of her blog entries, so that even if something happens to the blog, you still have everything. But yeah, so now that we've all had to learn technology for ReaperCon online, I expect to see more of my friends doing stuff like that. Hey there, Kiri. Good girl. Can you settle? Kiri's like, no, I want to make you totally nervous that I'm gonna, have a Kiri emergency. Doo-doo-doo. SE Animum with blaster effects. Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, we should actually, Justin. We should get a link to Rhonda's Patreon, just like with Anne's Patreon. Because, Rhonda doesn't stream for us, but she's totally a Reaper painter, and she, does all our kits and stuff. So it would make sense. And this is where, on this horrible, horrible bracelet that I've been fighting with, hi there, cutie, good girl, I really have to question at this point what I'm doing here on this bracelet. Am I gonna... Because there are two ways to tackle this. I could highlight every individual little plate thing, or I could highlight, it in an area, like I would do with hair. So I'm gonna try doing it in the area, and if I don't like the effect of doing just each section by section, then I'm gonna go back and play with it. And I'm using Sione Scarlet kind of glazing over the top of this white, by the way, guys. It started with Heraldic Red, I believe. Yeah, that's what she brings up. She actually mentions that she can use a lot higher resolution images on her PDFs, and so you can get a lot closer to her images, which is very nice. Can see how crazy good she is at smooth stuff. And some of her nice detailing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thanks, Victor. This is actually using the color of the beard is actually a kind of a weird one. I just used Dungeon Dwellers paints from Reaper, so I was using Kobold Scale, Goblin Skin, and Ogre Skin for this beard. They're all kind of off colors. They're they're not really bright and saturated. They've got, some brown and stuff in them, as you can tell, but it does make a very good fiery beard color for Mr. Fire Giant. Yes, you can subscribe for a year, Twisted Oma. Absolutely. Yeah, I actually enabled that the other day. With the minute they made it available. If you go and look at the levels, you should be able to subscribe. And they should have an article. If you're already on my Patreon, they should have an article that tells you how to do it if you're already on for monthly. I think if you go, I'm trying to remember where it is on your payment, maybe your payment settings, but yeah, check it out. Actually, a lot of new people who are like subbing at the $2 level have been doing annual, so that's nice. That way it's fire and forget. You don't have to worry about every month getting dinged. I'm going to introduce a little bit of my black and brown mix as a shadow. This one I want to be kind of shiny, Crawly. I kind of want it to be like enameled. It makes sense that this little jewelry thing. And you're right, I could, I was thinking that this would be the same, where these would be leather, but this separate bracelet might be metal because it's attached to metal. And thus it would be, you know, it would actually be like enameled. That's kind of my thought on it. I thought that it would look weird if getting this blend is really hard though. I thought it would look very odd if the red on this bracelet wasn't kind of a match for the gold. So I'm trying it. We'll see how it works. People always ask me to do non-standard colored NMM. And it's really, you know, it's just as easy or as hard as any other NMM. You're just using slightly different colors. But the thing with NMM isn't to worry about colors. It's to first think about your viewing angle and your highlights, as we were talking about earlier. Once you understand overhead lighting and bounce light and, you know, kind of your viewing angle and figuring out where your brightest highlight would be, where it would reflect toward the viewer, then you can do NMM with any color in the world. Doesn't matter. So colored NMM would not be any different. So I want to go down here and put an under reflection in here. Oh, cool. Thanks, DDH. Thank you all who are my patrons. I was just talking to somebody the other day about how I love how my Patreon has grown. I'm working hard on a special offer or two. One in particular. There are a couple of things I'm going to try to do to get more people in. Although I really like my community right now. I really like my Discord. You guys are always so good about showing me horrible Kickstarters that I shouldn't back but want to. What do we call that channel? We ought to call it the enablement channel, but we call it supplies talk or something so that we suck people in and then they're like, oh no, all the Kickstarters. We locked in our pledge for the Camelot one that Big Child did, and we, because I've been waiting for so long for the Limbo one, we're into that. I am just waiting for their pledge manager. So, what I'm kind of trying to do here, if you guys look, is concentrate on consistently alternating highlight and shadow. Like, it's kind of hard. But if you look, I've got a band of highlight, and I've got a band of highlight, and I've got a band of highlight. And if I alternate that, it looks kind of funky. And I'm not sure I like it, but it's interesting. The other way to do this would be to just do a highlight, a broad highlight here, work it up and down. And do it that way instead of doing like every little piece as a separate piece. When you do every little surface as a separate piece with its own highlights and shadows, even if you're being consistent, you're kind of implying that these are slightly different, like angled, or they're like they have a little bit of extra detail on them. That means that this is not just a round surface with scores. You know, you're really implying that these plates are somewhat different, right? Like maybe the gold plates are inlaid on top of the red or something. Like, or they are separate plates. Hey, Grail Knight, thanks for the raiding party. Awesome. Hi, everybody. Hi, new people. If you don't know me, I'm Anne. I work for Reaper. Only part-time now. I stream for them. But we do a show every morning at 11:30 a.m. Central to 1 p.m. Central Time. And I do lots of painting of Reaper miniatures. And today we are working more on our Fire Giant. And I've been talking a lot about non-metallic metal. A lot. This is the NMM stream. That's how Justin ought to retitle it. All right, so if I'm going to keep doing this.
But I'm going to let you know I do not have a keyboard now. I stepped away, and my cat knocked an entire glass of water on top of it on
Oh
my desk.
no, Justin cannot type anything, guys. He's
So all I have is a
helpless.
mouse.
All he has is a mouse. I'm surprised the cat didn't attack the mouse instead of the keyboard. Obviously, she has her priorities wrong. Like, aren't cats supposed to attack mice? I mean, I don't get it.
Yeah, I may not be able to tell. I'm pretty livid right now, but
Yes.
I'm gonna go try to find the keyboard.
All right, all right. Sounds good. Sounds good. We're good. We got 20 minutes. Rock it out. It is Naughty Pet Day. Oh, cool, Greenlight. What were you painting? No, a shadow there. You need to steal more stuff from my brain, Shadow Raven. That's okay. That's what the Patreon is for. Everybody can steal things from Anne's brain. I don't mind. Hey, my brain cell quota seems to slightly regenerate every night, so far I'm able to deal with the drain. Just trying to get this all to look right. It's difficult. This bracelet is very difficult the way I'm doing. Yes, from cute to hate is actually a great cat slogan. All right, so those are more toward the top. This needs to be more in line with the top. This probably needs to come down a little bit. Oof, the hardness of the NMM on weird surfaces. Just touching it up, and I might just wipe this whole thing out. I don't know. It's needs tuning. Needs tuning badly. One mini to practice blending on. If you're talking 28mm Varl, I would choose a Bobby Jackson Templar. You really can't go wrong with them. In my layering class, I almost always use one. The reason is that Bobby's Templars have like usually a big flowy cape, and you want that. Bobby does very good flowy capes that have a lot, like the folds aren't too deep and the tops are nice and broad, so that you can practice your blending on that surface. Also, if you get a Bones one, they're really cheap. If you're looking to try your hand at a bust, this one that I just got for one of my coachings is a good one. It's Nocturnus Esthel. Also has a ton of skin, so it will up your game, as well as hair and a bit of cloth. So it's a nice simple bust. Academic busts, as we call them, are usually good places to practice because they have lots of smooth, usually a lot of skin, a lot of smooth surfaces. Rock Troll, kinda Mathophile. I don't know. I think the Bobby Jackson cloaks I like a lot better. Let's see here. Just catching up on chat. Thank you very much, Judge Spud, for the amazing. I've been working on him for a long time. I like every week or every other week I come back to him and we do a bit more. And he's such a huge model and he has so many details that if I were to paint the whole thing on stream, we would just be doing this one model for weeks and weeks and weeks. And I've done that before on a Reaper stream. I don't want to do that again. So, his favorite part is the beard. The first thing I did, Zambi's like, the rest of it, who cares? But I'm agonizing over my NMMs right now, so, I'll just continue. I'll just sit over here quietly and agonize. Just because I decided to do each of these little plates as a separate plate instead of making it easy. I could have just made it all red, and it would have been so easy, guys. And I could have just done it as one big highlight with a shadow, and that would have been so much easier. Oh, well. I'm just going to suffer. You all have to hear me suffer. All right. Yeah, metal's all about the highlights. So that's what we've been actually talking about. All of this stream, Judge Spud, is how to think about light falling on your model and how that's really key to getting some dramatic effects and understanding when you start doing something like gemstones or non-metallic metal like this. Yes. Sir Malcolm is one of the ones I recommend. There's also a guy that's more recent with a hammer. I have him over in my box. I don't want to fetch him. But here, I will fetch him. I'll show you guys. Because I use him for this sort of thing all the time. Any Templar, most of the Templars have big flowy capes. Let me see. Where is he? There he is. So the reason I say this, actually, I guess he's got a shield on his back. So this one is not like super. Oh yeah, he's good. He's good. All right, so haha, I painted his head green because I was doing a green skin tutorial for somebody. But so this guy has he's an orc. We've changed him into an orc, rar. But as you can see, he's got some nice flowy cloth. Mostly it's these big folds that Bobby does on capes that I love and that I think really are wonderful to practice blending on, layering. Both layering and wet blending. Because you've got enough room, since these are big folds, you've got enough room to do the sideways layering stroke on them, or you can do the wet blends. And you've got a lot of area to work with. So I really feel, and you can, you can paint it, and then if you don't quite get it, you can paint over it. There's no detail here to lose, so you could paint several coats of different colors on top of this sort of cape and get a lot of mileage out of this particular model or a model like it. So I like this guy a lot. I like his big hammer and his keys and his details and his book. I think he's fantastic. He's a great subject for classrooms. That's why I always use him with my layering and glazing class. Him or somebody like him. Pop that box back over there. Stay. All right. Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, and Malcolm's also good. He's one of the original Templars. Show Rock Troll? Do you need me to show Rock Troll Twisted? Or did you show him a picture? Show him a picture of Rock Troll. Because Rock Troll can come in for a cameo. So, okay, if you were going to use this model for blending, yes, you could. You wouldn't do as much striations, probably, as I'm doing, but he would be a good one for blending, like over here on his hands and on his arm and stuff like that. He just has, I guess the leg is pretty good, too. He just has some rocky, weird angles, so that might throw you when you're trying to use him as a blending practice. And here I've very much blocked in everything. I'm not really blending at this point. I did some simple wet blends here to get all the highlights laid down. So yeah, there's some good areas on this for blending, absolutely. If you like to paint troll butt, there you are. All right, so now back to my agony. You know what? Let's just do some leather. I've been agonizing. I'm sick of agonizing. We're going to go over here and we're going to do some kind of little streaky things. Now with leather on this fine a scale, you don't really have a lot of room to do the cracks that you see on like belts. Like normally a piece of leather being stretched around something like this would crack like a belt. So it'd crack in cracks across the surface of the belt as it was going around. You can see this. It's much easier to do it on busts like Mr. Grumpy. Mr. Grumpy has the most realistic leather texture that I've done yet, if you can see. Let me see here. Let me see if I can lower Mr. Grumpy a little bit. Yeah, there you go. So you can see that I've done some scratches and gouges on the leather. I've worn it. I've done the cross striping here to show that this bends a lot, and so the leather is cracking across the surface. You've got more of that up here. The belts always wear at the edges, so you've got a much lighter area there. So all of these things you can do at a smaller scale, but they're going to be much more simplified. You're not going to be able to do all this different texture. You can see I've got a lot of lighter and darker kind of patterning on the dark leather even to show that it's more realistic, since leather often has some variation in color after it's been dyed or tanned or treated. Oh, cool. Well, he needs to start watching then. Your dentist needs to take up miniature painting. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to kind of block out some of that texture that you just saw in Mr. Grumpy. I'm going to kind of stipple the edge of this, and I'm doing a few thin lines across it, maybe where there'll be big cracks. Keep your lines more or less parallel as much as you can. You don't have to be perfect, and you can definitely like put wider spaces between some lines and more narrow spaces between others. That helps to make it look more natural. Let's get really, really, really close. All right, so kind of like that, and I'm underpainting this in white so that I can go over it with reds. But it's easier if you're trying to do fine detail and you need to highlight the area. It's much easier, I think, to underpaint it. Yeah, I need to get Grumpy. I actually did take decent pictures of Grumpy at one point, and I need to put them up on my website. The website has been slacking lately because everything else is taking so much more priority. There are not enough hours in the day. That's the only problem with freelancing. I feel like that to finish one thing, I need to neglect other things. Probably need to get over that mindset and just get things done, like, based on priority. Which I do most of the time. Just sometimes I'm just like, arg, I want to be doing 3 different things all at once. Mr. Grumpy isn't even my best mini. You should sacrifice. Alright, so I'm painting some red over this. Now, technically, this should be kind of tan, probably, if I'm doing a... like the leather cracking, because it's obviously the leather's been dyed, but it would still probably show through in tan. So let me we'll just grab our rich leather and throw some white into it, which should give us a nice tan color. This is where you learn the versatility of mixing. Rich leather plus white makes a very pretty tan, kind of a caramel color. I really like it. Hi Kiri, you're a good girl. Now that I've gotten some of those scratches suggested, though, I can come back in with my tan. Sometimes a really light color won't read quite right, is the only thing. We'll see if it does. We can at least do some stipples and stuff. Got a little bit too big there. I probably want to also do a highlight. Yeah, I do need to outsource my website. You are absolutely right, Shadow Raven. Like, I don't really need... Like, I need somebody that I can just send pictures to and they put them up for me. That I can just, like, shoot off a caption. But the part of the holdup, though, is that right now I'm really dissatisfied with my gallery function on my website. And so I was trying to find a template for Square that would do what I wanted it to do, where every model has a different, like, gallery page. And it doesn't want to do that, so I need to look around. But then again, sometimes doing research like that is the biggest time sink, right? So... And you're always like, well, but I have to get these PDFs done because it's my Patreon and I'm responsible for it. So that's where it's like, sometimes it seems like some things always get shoved down the priority chain. And often they're the things that you love the most, right? The things that you enjoy the most can be some of those things that get sacrificed because other things need to get done. So it's just kind of learning to work that way without getting terribly frustrated, and finding time to do things is the challenge. So I'm doing a little bit of white. So we're fading out this leather a lot. We're cracking it. I'm going to bring some darks in, some dark browns from the opposite direction. Hi, Kiri. Are you going to settle? You're making me really nervous, dog, when you walk out of the room. I don't know if you're like, I need to go out or what. So I'm going to bring in some darks from the other direction to break up some of this red. And so that the cracks and stuff have a little bit of context and added texture. I don't want to get too heavy-handed with it, but I can use this color to break it up a little bit. I can also use my dark red, my Asmodeus, mixed into this brown. This is blackened brown. Yeah, I had to update my web knowledge as well. I do okay. It is something I've always enjoyed. But I do think at this point that if I have the cash ever, if my Patreon gets a bit bigger, maybe I'll be able to outsource my website updates to somebody else. I wouldn't dream of asking anybody to do it without remuneration. It's work. It's fun work, but it's work. So I'm beating up this bracelet a fair bit. I think I'm a little symmetrical here though, so I'm going to wipe out one of those lines a bit. When it looks too regular, then I'm going to dim down some things. Yeah, so you don't want all your lines to be the same thickness. You don't want them all to be the same length. You want to break it up. Just want it to look kind of cool. I need somebody in the community that I can pay in minis, yeah. Pay in painted minis. Let's see here. So I want to look back off and look at... Texture is going to show up more on upper surfaces where the light is kind of, you know, hitting it. And that's where it's going to interrupt the surface. And so it's going to be seen up there. So this is actually looking pretty good. Yeah, and it's not like I need a whole lot as far as, you know, maintenance for my website. Mostly at this point, I mean, I need to write some stuff for it, but mostly it's just putting up models for sale, models for, like, if I ever don't sell one to my Patreon crowd, then I need to have a page on my website for that, you know, stuff like that. It's little things that I'd like to get updated. So what's really hard is figuring out where streaming fits in the grand scheme of things. And I also am very cognizant that I'm much more energetic and have a lot more get up and go earlier in the day, and my energy starts to flag later in the day, so I'm trying to make it all work. This little thing is going to be annoying. So here, with these tiny little dragon teeth, I'm probably just going to go for a straight highlighting. I might use my tan a little bit to do that. So I'm going to hit the upper edge of each of these little... Because these are like kind of gummy, like they're kind of rounded, each of these little dragon teeth, because it's just done like with a scoring indentation. So it really is like just leather stitched together. So I can just highlight the upper edge, and depending on how shiny my leather is how much more I would do. So if my leather is extremely shiny, then maybe I'd do more of a general highlight over this area. But if my leather is not tremendously shiny, I might not. I don't know. Let's see here. Let's do a general highlight here. And I might do a general highlight. Might intensify my highlight here. Kind of want everything to read like you're highlighting it consistently. Leather is a little bit shiny, unless it's really dirty. And I do not have my blue liner open. Oh no. So that highlight band that I'm putting in right here, it kind of corresponds to this whole area over here. So kind of making sure my highlights are consistent across each surface. So when I come and highlight these leather, they need to be highest highlight in the same kind of band of area that I've decided my highlights are hitting. So be consistent across the entire thing. Thanks, Ivy. Wow, 13 months. Excellent. Yeah, I get it, Zero. No, it's not something I'm actively pursuing right now anyway. It'll have to come with time. And like I said, there are things like that, things the Patreon, like if the Patreon gets bigger, or when the Patreon gets bigger, there are things that will definitely be enabled, like that sort of thing. Having somebody help me with that, free up that money. It would be nice. It would be nice to have somebody that I could pay to like do a website update and like a social media update every week, you know, that sort of thing. That would free me up, you know, to make sure that I don't have to go do that. That means I get to keep working on the streaming and the PDFs for you guys and the videos and all that, you know, the other stuff I do. I just got some blue liner out because I was annoyed that I couldn't glaze that blue. Yeah, I'm kind of old school like that too, Val. I'm working to learn WordPress because David recommended it to me. I am capable of writing. I actually did write our dog club's website in Bootstrap. And WordPress and Bootstrap work very well together. So I actually have a webinar web course that I'm slowly watching to learn how to make my own WordPress templates with Bootstrap, since I do know that. That sort of thing. So I do really enjoy working on websites. And that's the problem, right? It's like it makes it hard to outsource it when it's something you enjoy. I am just going to get some straight up blue liner. There. I really need to order more blue liner. I'm getting dangerously low, really. I need to start, actually, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start a list of paints I need to order. And blue liner will be at the top of it. Blue liner. Walnut. I need another bottle of walnut. There we go. Just when I start getting really low, I can't just walk into the paint department anymore. I have to actually order these things. Oh, the humanity. Yeah, it's like you said. Squint and imagine the whole bracer is a cylinder. Light zone, shadow zone, under reflection. And then apply it to the different details and colors. Yep. Sometimes it's easy, Mr. Schubert, and some days your brain just don't want to work that way. Especially when it's this fiddly, right? You got all these intricate little thingies, and you're just like, WTF. WTF, Chris Lewis, what were you thinking? When, usually you're like, this is a nice model. Yay, I like painting it. But then there's a lot of metal. Hi, Kiri, what's up? Little doglet, it's almost time for our stream to be over. If you can just hold out a little longer. Can you settle down just a little? The doglet is restless. It's like the natives are restless. Hey, Justin, did you ever find a keyboard? It's hard for Justin to actually be able to help us raid anybody if he can't find a keyboard, since his cat has destroyed his. I'm just going to actually do a little bit of lighter light there. I'm going to glaze it. Glaze some white in when you aren't certain. And you need more light, glaze some light in. Glazing with light colors is fraught with peril. It is very easy to leave brushstrokes. So practice it on a model before you actually do it on a model you care about, or you may end up having to repaint things. It can leave a nasty watermark too if you're not careful. That's why you want to move fast. You don't want to let it pool. Now I gotta make sure. What was that, David?
I thought it might be good to talk about the difference between glazing white over red and red over white and the effect you get.
Oh. Yeah. Well, you can kind of see how glazing the white over the red has bleached it out, but it hasn't really taken it pink, guys. I am missing some of my saturation, but I'm not missing it too much. I am a little bit off. I need more highlights up here. You do get different effects, and it's worth experimenting when you're practicing your glazing to try to see. Like for me, I do a lot of glazing red over white because I find that it gives me a nice crisp highlight without going pink. Like it lets me highlight red without going too pink, because the layer of red will still be very strong.
Yeah, I would say you get a much more saturated result when you're glazing red over white as opposed to white over red.
Oh yeah, I mean, I just bleached out this whole bracer. Like, look at it, guys. You can see how intense the red was down here, and it still had intense parts of red in this bracer, but then when I threw a white glaze over it, total bleached out. But that's all right. That's kind of, it depends on what you're going for, right? I do want to actually lighten up this whole kind of, it is a cylinder, so I do need this whole band to be lighter. So not only am I highlighting each individual thing, then I'm trying to bring up the whole thing harmoniously.
I'm here, Miss Anne.
You're here. Do you have a keyboard?
In a sense. I'm using a virtual keyboard because I'm going to have to go, I literally have to go buy a keyboard as soon as the show's over.
Oh my. I'm sorry.
Also, completely unrelated note. Do you know of any place that accepts cats as payment for keyboards?
No, I do not know of any place that would accept a cat as payment for a keyboard. Like, I mean,
Okay.
I'm not certain what you could trade your cat in for, all things considered. It depends on how cute your cat is and how innocent it can seem.
She is a beautiful Siamese.
Oh, trouble.
Oh, she's trouble. She is trouble.
No wonder she knocks over stuff on your stuff. That's a Siamese trait.
I've also never had I've never had an animal that in her period of because we've had her since she was like 6 weeks old. I've also never had an animal that caused this much like property damage in the 4 years we've had her.
Oh, feline of credit. Yeah, that's feline of credit, Derek. That's brilliant. There we go. Derek Schubert with the happy, with the funny for you. It wouldn't be a very long feline of credit. Ah, dear.
Yeah, she's adorable most of the time. She's just she's a hunter, so we trust her to basically debug the house and find snakes and stuff like that, which she does a good job of. But with that being said, that comes with the territory of exploring everything all the time like it's brand new.
So she's a mongoose, is what you're telling me. Rikki Tikki Tavi ought to be her name. Yeah, Siamese. Trouble on the hoof. I've owned a Siamese and a half Siamese. But yes.
You're not wrong, Oval. Well, to be fair, she has never destroyed a computer component, a knock on wood, right? Until this moment. She's only ever destroyed like headphones because she'll knock them off and the dog chews them up, or she's destroyed glasses and bowls. And I mean, she went out of her way to try to knock off a coffee pot full of coffee this morning.
Oh my.
Yeah, Michaela was telling me about it, and it was just like she had to put like strength behind pushing that off. Although she didn't, she tried.
Yep. Well, Siamese, they're kind of semi-demonic animals. I'm sorry. But, just saying. In my opinion, having owned 2. And they were very, very nice cats. Or having owned 1.5 one. And then, of course, Mama-san at the shop, who in her younger days would get into everything.
Yeah, I think she's mad, D. Clearman, because we, as of yesterday, we're dog sitting this tiny little like terrier. He's like 3 pounds, but he chases her or tries to, even though she's 3 times his size, and she doesn't like it, obviously.
Yeah.
And I think she's retaliating at this point by going, well, you know what? You guys bring the dog in the house for 3 days. I'm gonna make your life hell.
Yep. That sounds about par to the course. So, okay, guys, now see what you got here before I have to stop and actually fix this area because I'm annoyed at it. So what we've got here is see the light is now kind of showing up across the entire cylinder. So I still have to work with these because I'm not happy with how they're turning out, but in general, we're bringing this up. Hey, Paul John's Life, you showed up like 2 minutes before we were going to go and raid somebody. My mom used to call those drop kick dogs, Taz. The ones that were that small. Mom doesn't have, like, my parents don't have huge dogs like I do, but they still have, like, dog-sized dogs, not little tiny dogs. So Mom is somewhat disparaging about them.
Yeah, he's basically like, you can pick him up or scoop him up with one hand. He's tiny. Like, tiny. And he's old, too. He's like, I think 10 years old, 11, 12 years old.
Yeah, for a small dog, that's not too old, but still.
No, sure.
All right, so we're getting there, guys. We're getting there. We're bringing up our highlights in a nice solid band across the arm. I just have to figure out what I'm doing with this. I probably just need to darken this top bit, and I will be fine. But yeah. So we're perfect. It's 11:07. I started a little bit late, and we haven't had a queue emergency, so we went for a nice long time. So what do we got for raid?
We're going to be raiding Jimmy.
Jimmy! Love to Jimmy. We haven't rated Jimmy in a long time, and he helped us out. He did a lot of ReaperCon, didn't he? Didn't he do like a big
He
time
did
slot?
a yeah, he did a show, and it's it was great. Their show was great. Check it out on the VODs, guys, if you haven't gotten a chance from the con.
Yeah, for sure.
Sometime here soon, I'll have the videos uploaded, the highlight videos from the con uploaded to YouTube. It's a little more truncated
Ah,
and
yep.
dense, so you guys might like that a little better. But
A little bit shorter, easier to watch. All right, cool. There we go. I've got it corrected a little bit. See, guys, all I needed to do was shade a little bit more up and top and bottom and concentrate my highlights to get that to look right. And now I'm still getting the effect that this is a enameled and gold metal band, but I'm not spreading out my highlights too much. Like, it's looking correct now. So, indeedy. I'm not streaming today on my channel this afternoon. I'm gonna be catching up on Patreon stuff again. So yeah. Excelente. Thank you all for showing up, and let's go say hi to Jimmy. Have a great day, guys.
awesome.
Thanks for
Yeah,
showing
thank you
up,
guys
Alia.
very much. Oh, Oval, I'm working on Ian's video as well. That's coming up too. But make sure to catch Sadie's show this afternoon and then Reaper Live tonight. Thanks you guys very much.